So what's the landscape in the US right now then?
I am really excited to see the United States taking a leading role, not only in seeking feedback and guidance, but also in the exploration of these leading edge technologies. In order to save the internet in the age of AI, we need to be able to verify who we are and who we're interacting with in digital space.
Crypto adoption's huge. There are countries and governments talking about central bank digital currencies, and now we've got the US going full steam ahead. It's stablecoin season, it's digital dollars, but there's no explicit provisions for consumer privacy rights.
Where both the European Union and the United States are failing to protect businesses and to align with the incentives of consumers is
Hello and welcome to another slice of CCN video content. With me, Eddie Mitchell, journalist at CCN. I'll be chatting with Evin McMullen. I hope I've said that correctly. Founder of the privacy-focused platform Privado ID. And he's also the co-founder of this and CEO of identity platform Disco. And you're a former Consensus alumni and basically all-round busybody. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here today.
My pleasure. We're going to be talking about stablecoins, proliferation of digital dollars, and ultimately financial privacy, which is the big question, I guess. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to build Privado ID as a starter?
Certainly. So my name is Evin. I'm the co-founder of both Privado ID and Billions Network, which is the sort of network of humans and AI agents that are identified with and able to interact on-chain and online using technology developed at Privado ID. So for a little bit of background context, I have been working full-time in the crypto as in cryptography space since about 2017. Before that, my career wound through a variety of human-centered design practices, helping to bring products to market like IBM Watson in the earlier days of
Wow.
my AI journey, as well as working on things like connected hardware, early connected toothbrushes and mirrors, mesh networks for things like self-driving cars, as well as a stint at Berkshire Hathaway working on insurance and reinsurance products. So a fairly diverse background of experiences that help me to understand not only technical development, but also what that means in practice at scale. So
Right.
to build our current venture along with my colleagues and teammates is realizing that in order to use decentralized ledger technology to improve coordination, in order to save the internet in the age of AI, we need to be able to verify who we are and who we're interacting with in digital space. And that's how we got to now.
Okay. Can you summarize, like, how many years would you say that you just covered in that introduction? Like, what career climb are you spanning in crypto now?
I'm gonna date myself here, but actually, I first started exploring and building in the decentralized technology space back when we just called it Bitcoin. And
Right.
it
Okay.
has been about 15 years of adventure and counting.
Right. And I suppose it sort of brought you here to this really peculiar moment we have now where crypto adoption's huge. There are countries and governments talking about central bank digital currencies, and now we've got the US going full steam ahead. It's stablecoin season, it's digital dollars. But it's a tricky one because with the Genius Act, there's AML and KYC compliance requirements, but there's no explicit provisions for consumer privacy rights. How did this happen, do you think, and where is this headed?
So it seems that right now, the public request for comment specifically includes a request for information about and recommendations for digital identity verification technologies. And so I wouldn't say that there is an explicit omission of privacy, but rather an open question of how to balance privacy, consent, user control with appropriate governance and regulatory adherence. And so I think, we are in the privileged position in a history now to not have to compromise one for the other. Rather, the maturity of zero knowledge proofs and privacy preserving technologies that utilize the devices we already have in our homes, such as our laptops and cell phones, allow us to do things like prove our age, our location, our nationality to websites and applications without revealing the underlying information, such as our birthday or specifically which nation we live in.
Yes. But they've known how to do this for a while, like, and for some reason, adoption on that front has been minimal.
So, what I would say is we have known in an academic context how to do this for a while.
Right.
However, call it, 5, 6 years ago, if you wanted to generate a zero knowledge proof on your own device, you were going to be sitting at a desktop computer, clicking a button, waiting 30 minutes and praying and crossing your fingers that something was going to happen. And that, of course, is not an appropriate time frame or experience for something like a banking application. Response time,
True.
for something that we're, used to experiencing in a more traditional sense. And so now, really, only in the past year or so have we arrived at the technical maturity of these technologies, being able to generate proofs in under 2 seconds on a mobile device on the go. And so, as far as evolution of this technology goes, I agree that we have known in the abstract academic, context how to do this for quite some time. But the execution and implementation of exactly how has required an immense amount of research and development from teams such as ours, supported by folks like the Ethereum Foundation, ensuring that these capabilities are open source and broadly available. And so, one area in which I'm seeing some government adoption and sort of rigorous assessment outside of the United States is actually in the European Union, where we're doing some work with the European Commission and have seen the ways in which they have sought education around these capabilities and even started to implement them in some of their sandbox environments and cohorts. So I think we are finally in the exploratory phase where governments are prepared to engage these tools. One other that I would note is, our team works with the Ministry of Labor in India, supporting hundreds of thousands of individuals to access social security services, and in a manner that allows them to have a better experience with the government, but also preserves their privacy and uses zero knowledge proofs. So we are in the nascent early days of this adoption.
Right. And you mentioned that you're sort of working in the sandboxes in the European Union, and they're sort of going about crypto in quite a different way. But what's very clear about their intent in the information age is consumer privacy, GDPR, probably one of the biggest things that they did. Do you sort of foresee perhaps the EU and perhaps the US handling digital dollar or stablecoin privacy, or even CBDC privacy differently, because the European Union is actively pursuing CBDCs? They don't necessarily see it as something as a threat to sovereignty and privacy that people in the US might. What are your thoughts there?
So I actually see a little bit more similarity between the U.S. and Europe, perhaps than your question might suggest. So, for example,
Okay.
states like Virginia, like California, have laws that are very similar to GDPR. In fact, however, the differences between them are fairly subtle and nuanced, but overall the objective is the same. How might we enable further consent and control over the data we create once it leaves our fingertips and enters the databases of businesses? Now, I think where both the European Union and the United States are failing to protect businesses and to align with the incentives of consumers is, they're not really taking into account the cost and complexity of incorporating, these laws into the everyday business practices of, mom and pops, and startups, where being able to actively manage, control, even remove data at the request of citizens can, in fact, be very costly, can be quite complex because many of these database systems were not built to extract data. They were merely built to ingest it. And
Right.
so I think by the same token of regulation with the intention to protect individuals, I think that regulation also needs to have sound guidance, explicit recommendations, and an active discussion with business leaders, so that we do not put these businesses in a disadvantaged position, or even potentially harmful position in trying in earnest to comply, but finding an immense amount of uncertainty there. What I will also say is that I think for many businesses, the sort of wholesale collection of user data has led to an immense risk that they never intended to embark upon. So let's say you're an e-commerce website. You are collecting information such as contact information, payment information, shipping information, retaining that in a growing database that, for the duration of your business really has no end in sight. And so that means that instead of simply providing e-commerce services, you've also signed up to be, the custodian of quite sensitive and important data. And the more data there is in that manner, stored in a centralized and traditional fashion, the higher the risk there is that a bad actor might try to inappropriately access it. And so I think that, client-side data using zero-knowledge proofs to prove capabilities instead of handing all of that data over to businesses also can reduce their risk and their cost and
Right.
complexity of providing services.
But it seems that we're sort of sleepwalking into the opposite scenario without even realizing it. You have the Wyoming Frontier Stable Token, I believe it's called, which is a partnership between the government and a couple of private entities. And you're probably going to see more private entities launch stable coins in the US. You already have PayPal, who has their own stable coin. There are crypto businesses getting into it. But again, we're handing over. But there's no talk of zero knowledge proof enabled stablecoin proliferation, right? There's no talk about data preserving stablecoins or anything like that. And if
So
data is super sensitive, I don't know.
I would respectfully beg to differ there. Our
Yeah.
team is actually actively engaged with a number of stablecoin issuers to better understand the requirements that they're up against, the technical needs that they have, and the types of experiences that they'd like to deliver.
Okay, so what's the landscape in the US right now then?
So I would say the landscape in the US when it comes to stablecoin issuers is one of hunger for information. Many of
Right.
the parties that you described come from, call it a more traditional financial ecosystem, as opposed to cutting edge cryptography. And so I would say, we are now in a moment of information exchange. So in addition to public commentary requested by the Treasury, our team is frequently pulled into discussions to educate folks on what is a zero knowledge proof, how does it work, and we, fortunately have a long history of working closely with financial institutions like HSBC and Deutsche Bank to help bring,
Okay.
early versions of these tools into more of a traditional financial realm. So I think now we are starting to bring it together, but I would definitely applaud many of these actors for their, active pursuit of more information and acknowledgement of when they do not have internal expertise on these subjects that, they feel are going to be really important.
Did you have any conversations with the Wyoming Stablecoin project then about
Um,
what they're doing?
so I haven't spoken to those guys directly, but my DMs are always open and, welcome that message.
Do you do you think that, I mean, have you had a chance to look at if if they're implementing any decent level of privacy or consumer protection rights?
So I think when it comes to stablecoin issuance itself, I think that is not necessarily um, an imposition on or a potential violation of any explicit privacy. It is only through the usage of that stablecoin and the requirements of how it might be accessed, how it might be transacted. That's sort of when we start to think about privacy, consent, and control. I think it is highly likely that stablecoin usage will be moderated through on-ramp and wallet providers more than it will be the issuers of the stablecoins themselves. In
Right.
the same way that the car that you use to drive on the highway likely informs your mobility experience more than the asphalt used to pave the road.
That's a good point. I like that. but then so one of the key the other bill major executive order that went through was the anti CBDC one, central bank digital currencies. And this is all about being anti-surveillance, privacy preserving, because there's plenty of fear that government issued digital dollars are probably one of the riskier ways to go about it. Why is it okay for private companies and fund managers and whatnot to handle this instead?
So I think there's actually been quite a long history of enterprise backing representation of dollars that have been leveraged around the world. Perhaps I'm aging myself a little bit here, but when I was young, I remember something called American Express travelers checks, where when you were traveling abroad outside the United States, you would go to American Express and receive little vouchers that were equivalent to US dollars that only you were able to redeem. And the value of
Wow.
assets was backed by the company American Express and allowed you to spend dollars in places around the world where that currency was not commonplace. So by similar
That's so
vein,
cool.
yeah, it's pretty, it's pretty cool. Like, what's old is new again. There are many such
Yeah.
examples here where we give a cool new technology a great name, but it actually refers to, iteration upon practices that have existed for decades. So, on the one hand, I think accessibility and global coverage is a really fantastic offering. I think providing a low barrier to participation, and the ability to access different currencies without the usurious fees, and
Right.
friction of many current methods of transferring money, whether it's wire transfers or things like Western Union. So overall, as far as financial inclusion goes, I think that this is an iteration upon a well-known, sort of well scaled, call it technology or concept. However, I think it's also very important that we moderate the extent to which defaulting to public is the way of transacting on chain. Um,
Okay.
I think of the sort of designs of networks like Ethereum and Bitcoin as missing an essential layer of consent and control, that the function of these networks requires a significant amount of data to be public, on the ledger, sort of in a globally accessible form.
Right.
But part of that, requirement was because we physically did not have the technologies that would make the ability to transact in a more private way possible. But now we do. And so we don't necessarily need to compromise privacy and compliance. We just need to build logical guardrails in order to do so.
What would these logical guardrails be?
So, on the one hand, I think from a technical perspective, ensuring the ability, for example, to verify that your counterparty is not, is not a verboten person when it comes to transaction. I think the sort of shorthand for that is like gosh, I'm blanking out right now. It starts with a P. There's like a little abbreviation, but basically, ensuring that when you're sending capital, you're transacting with stablecoins, that you're not paying terrorists or not, taking money that was generated through illegal means. And so some amount of transparency, of visibility, I think is essential to create a safe system. But also, if that is, a design requirement, then we can implement technologies that make such verification possible without revealing all of the data of your counterparty.
Does that require sort of everybody to adopt the technology though? Is it possible for one party to initiate a sort of zero knowledge proof process with another party that doesn't have any Web3 infrastructure or stuff like that?
Absolutely. That's actually a really great question, right? Does the ability to leverage zero knowledge proofs demand the existence of a blockchain in the system? And the answer is no. And so
Yay.
one of the awesome things about this technology is that it can be implemented both in blockchain based systems as well as in legacy systems that do not include blockchains at all. In fact, many of our enterprise and government partners are not super comfortable with tokens, not super comfortable with blockchain-based environments, but are still interested in things like digital currencies that exist, outside of a blockchain context, or personalized applications and services that rely on identity and payments, but are not necessarily going to be using traditional crypto tokens. And so that's sort of why I refer to it as crypto like cryptography, where the math checks out no matter where you go, on chain or online. It works well in crypto systems as sort of a function of its design, but is not limited to those environments alone.
That's super cool. I didn't realize that sort of things like that were happening because for a while it seemed that if you wanted to adopt blockchain solutions, you needed to have a back end or a front end or buy something that required you to run a node to be able to participate in whatever thing the network is offering. Makes it really hard to allow these things to proliferate or to be adopted in the first place. Have you personally seen any particularly cool examples of real world adoption at the moment, zero knowledge proofs that are being used right now?
Certainly. I would say, from our team's privileged perspective, we support and, steward the world's most broadly used zero knowledge libraries on Earth. There are more than 9,000 projects that have forked and are building on top of our libraries. And so we get to see kind of the gamut of interesting use cases where these technologies arise. In the financial space, I think things like portable KYC, like being able to prove that you are a customer of a financial institution to different branches of that institution around the world, being able to move your data physically from one place to another, thus allowing you to, receive better personalization and services. Um, on sort of more of the wild card side, maybe like take a step out of sort of the pure, like more traditional financial use cases. Some really cool ones include things like clinical investigations by physicians that can be conducted across nation state boundaries because they can share data in a private manner, but while still aggregating insights about all of those different patients that are, let's say, participating in a clinical study. Our colleagues over at TikTok Research are using client-side zero knowledge proofs that are stewarded based on libraries stewarded by our teams to allow for individual app users to prove their in-app behavior without revealing their identity and the underlying information itself. So being able to personalize things like a social media feed without forking over all of the data about your browsing habits or your, what makes you you, whatever you've shared, whether that's your social graph or specific content preferences. So there are many different instances here. I could go on and on, but
Right,
I'll leave it there.
definitely. It's super cool, but it seems, and some of me just spitballing here, but it seems sort of antithetical to the Web2 model. The idea of, I mean, data farming is how a lot of these companies have made their money so they can direct advertising or whatever your way and manipulate your algorithms. What's the incentive for companies to not want to see, for example, your stablecoin transaction data? Is there any incentive for any of them to respect a person's data privacy?
So I would say there's a carrot and a stick. The stick is that managing, holding on to all of this data creates a massive honeypot that requires you to store, manage, care for, protect that information. And if there isn't a breach or inappropriate access, that can be massively harmful to that business, existential, in fact.
Yeah.
The carrot, I would say, is the survival of their business in the age of AI. So you've described what's often referred to as the original sin of the internet, an over reliance on display advertising as the backbone of the economic engine that we experience online and personalization.
Yeah.
Now, in the burgeoning age of AI, AI agents do not look at display ads. They are not interested in the personalized content provided on the edges of our browsing experience. Rather, we are talking about things like custom built or generative front ends that exist as a function of a specific query so that not everybody is looking at the same site, not everybody is being served the same content. Furthermore, we know that the
That's
current
mind blowing.
advertising model is broken, because many of these providers can't actually verify who and how content was engaged on the other side. And so I think there is a massive opportunity to not only manage risk, but also prepare for the AI-enabled internet, in moving past some of these Stone Age advertising technologies.
Stone Age advertising technologies that are still raking in plenty of money for these companies that are, would you say, set to lose quite a lot in this coming age? How are they going to pivot?
So I think we're already seeing it. So another
Yeah.
example of adoption of zero knowledge proofs is actually Google. The Google Research Group has been quite active in terms of not only pursuing zero knowledge proofs in individual identity credential contexts, but also leveraging them for things like verification of vital documents. We also see browsers like Opera incorporating this kind of ZK-enabled identity verification for users. And so I actually think that the pivot is happening. The pivot is now. This
Are
is
we
also
saying privacy is profitable now?
well, privacy can be very profitable. I would say that
Okay.
privacy is profitable and consent is sexy.
Very good. Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. So then where does that lead us into next year? Because all of these the stable acts regulations around the world are going to shift massively, and it's going to be digital dollars, digital yen, digital ones, everything, in probably very quick succession, because it'll be quite a competitive space, I believe. Where are stable coins headed then, and should people be concerned for their privacy in this era?
So I would say that, identity verification in the context of stablecoins is not just a checkbox, right? It is the bedrock of trust in digital finance. And so, as we were discussing earlier, the Genius Act, I think rightly elevates it as a core requirement, which is a huge win for consumers and legitimate businesses. However, with, great opportunity also comes likely great responsibility. And so we as developers, as those who are part of the regulatory conversation, must ensure that, meeting KYC, AML, and safety requirements is not, by the same token, a compromise of individual privacy and safety. And so solutions like digital credentials, like zero knowledge proofs and selective disclosure can help to achieve both.
Right. And where can people sort of guide themselves now, do you think? Is there a way for people to get ahead of this curve? The everyday consumer, not businesses, like the everyday person.
So if you are, dear listener, excited about understanding these technologies, you don't necessarily need to get a PhD in cryptography or computer science. They are already available at your fingertips to try out. So for a quick shill of our work, for example, you can visit the mobile app store on your phone, Android and Apple around the world, and download the Billions Network mobile application that allows you to do things like take your passport, tap it to your phone, pull the data out of the NFC chip in your passport, create a digital version of that on your phone that only you can see, only you can control. And then you can generate proofs like a green light or a thumbs up that gets sent out to applications and services to prove that you are over a certain age or from a certain country or have a certain KYC status without revealing any of that underlying information.
This is cool. It's this will sound maybe me showing my age a little bit, but when I started writing in crypto blockchain, one of like 7 years ago, while I was writing about this tech potentially being, locked into NFTs and things like this, I love how we've come to a point where, yeah, zero knowledge proofs are on your mobile and, yeah, simpler to use. I didn't think it would ever kind of come. It always seemed like a very novel idea, but obviously as crypto and digital assets and AI agents and all this stuff has become so ridiculous now. It's become so necessary, so unbelievably necessary. And fair play, you seem to be making a huge effort with what you're doing.
I would say also, you are not alone in your surprise of this timeline and how long you've been thinking about it. In fact, one of my sort of favorite thought leaders in the technology space is a professor named Larry Lessig, who teaches at the Berkman Klein Center for the Internet at Harvard. And in 1997, he suggested to his students and audience that one day you might be able to visit an establishment like a bar, and rather than handing over your driver's license, which discloses whether you're an organ donor and your home address, your eye color, instead you would be able to, offer some kind of technical solution where the doorman would be able to understand, yes or no. Yes, Evan fits my requirements. No, she does not, without revealing that underlying information. So, I guess from 1997 to now is quite a while. But Professor Lessig, I think we're doing you proud.
Right. I mean, what's fascinating is that we managed to do that kind of with finance, with like contactless payments and things like that. You just hand it over to the machine. The machine doesn't ask you to input your PIN. You don't need to swipe it or write down your name or details to fulfill the transaction. So it seems like people would probably be pretty comfortable with using something like that. How soon? How soon? How close are we to having sort of like mass adoption of this kind of stuff?
So we introduced Billions Network in early March of this year, and currently support a global community of 1.7 million users. And so,
Amazing.
although we are new to the scene, all of our growth has been organic and based on the very early versions of what we've released. So in addition to supporting hundreds of thousands of folks through government and enterprise, we are also taking it to the streets, directly to people's hands and devices. So we, ourselves firsthand have seen rapid evolution and development. I think, in the next 5 years, it will be reasonable to say that we have inverted the internet, and that our experience of online space is fundamentally different. Firstly, because of the adoption of AI tools and integration into that digital experience. In fact, I think every connected app will need to be rewritten from the ground up over the next 5 years because of AI. And then, secondly, in terms of the management of data and personalization of those experiences, we must necessarily have a way to identify and verify both ourselves as well as the AI agents that serve us in digital spaces. Because, of course, we cannot embrace stablecoin payments if we do not know who we are paying.
No, no, exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, that sentiment sort of started early with like the AI slop content you get on the internet. There's no watermark. There's no way metadata like for the everyday person to look into and go, oh, okay, this is automatically AI. Maybe those things will come with zero knowledge proofs and weird connections at end to end, so we can discern what's going on. And yeah, in the financial world, it's probably been more. It's no more important than ever. A very interesting time then. What's on your radar for 2026?
So for 2026, our team is very focused on enabling greater scale. So ensuring that organizations that serve hundreds of thousands, millions of users have a stable and reliant tech stack to build with. From a sort of personal interest perspective, I am really excited to see the United States taking a leading role, not only in seeking feedback and guidance, but also in the exploration of these leading edge technologies. I think, for many years, we have looked to other parts of the world to be, aggressive and innovative in their adoption of things like digital payments. So I think it is high time that the United States return to its position of innovative leadership. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that plays out.
Aye, super exciting. Amazing. I think then we'll probably leave it there because we could probably go on for quite a while. We will definitely have to catch up, perhaps in a few months or 6 months, maybe even in 5 years when we've inverted the internet, as you say. So we can wait till then. Is there anything you'd like to add for our listeners and our readers, and where can we catch you?
Certainly. So, if you are excited about our discussion today, you have more questions about what you think this may mean in a business or regulatory context, or you just want to nerd out about identity and verification, my DMs are always open. You can find me on X at Proven Authority. You can follow our team at billions underscore NTWK. You can find more about our technology at billions.network. And if you're interested in the infrastructure under the hood, you can always visit Privado, Privado.id.
Thank you so much. And just one more thing, you mentioned that you are speaking in Korea, you're heading to Hong Kong, you're going to be quite busy. I'm not sure when this video exactly will come out, but just in case, what's on the schedule?
Um, Let's see. So, for my forthcoming adventures in on the internet and in real life, I'm looking forward to attending Korea Blockchain Week as well as Token 2049 in Singapore, and then I will be locked in front of my computer for the foreseeable future after that.
Super exciting, super exciting. A reality check.
Indeed, although, like I often say, it is a beautiful day online and on chain, and it is great weather to be on the internet.
Damn, I love your optimism. I'm gonna need a little dose of that every now and then. I really appreciate this talk. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely appreciate it. It was a delight, and I look forward to reconvening to discuss how these predictions
Yes,
have played out.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm gonna have a lot more research and work to do on sort of AI agents and stuff because I've written stuff about that and sort of dead internet theory stuff. And you've sort of opened up a can of worms inside my brain, which is an awful expression when I say it out loud, but it makes sense. Now I've got me thinking about so many things. So yeah, we'll definitely have to reconvene. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. And
All right.
one more thing just to add here, we can, cut this part later if you want. But if you're interested in the AI agent verification edge of this discussion, our team actually created the first framework for accountability for AI agents. Of course, you cannot
Oh wow. Okay.
without identity. And so we developed a mechanism to be able to assign a unique identity to an instance of an AI agent so that you can prove that it is your agent and that it is related back to specifically you as an individual or an organization or business or branch of government. And
This
so
is
this
100%
allows
something I
for
need to talk
agents
about. Yeah.
to prove who they represent. There's no way to ask an AI agent right now, like, who's your daddy? Take me to your leader. um, and so that also forms the basis of agent to agent reputation. So enabling systems for us to create rules around which information can be disclosed to which agents to be able to,
Yes.
confirm and validate the fact that this is in fact Evan's agent and not a bad actor misrepresenting her on the internet. So happy to send that paper over your way and happy to chat more at any time.
Please, yeah, please do. And whoever's on the team, yeah, be delighted to speak to them because it's probably one of the crazier, lesser spoken about areas that the internet is again kind of sleepwalking itself into at the moment.